Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Forge. Whether you're sitting at your desk, driving to work, or you're in some other far off corner of the old world, this is SquareHammer. Hey y'all, this is your boy Blue, along with our new high elf fanatic Rene, and our welcome guest, Mathias Eliasson, the creator and the mind behind the Warhammer Armies Project. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's actually Eliasson or Eliasson in Swedish with the last name there. I guess we got to mention that one. But
okay.
like I said, Mathias is fine. But thanks for having me. It's really fun.
Of course. How are y'all doing this morning or this evening for y'all too?
Yeah, doing quite fine. So I have a day off from work, so can't really complain about that.
Nice.
Nice work, bud. Yeah, bloody oath.
Thanks.
Okay, so we can just dive right in.
Yeah, no problem.
So obviously you created the Warhammer Armies Project and you wrote all the codexes and the PDFs that are online and you put them all together. But let's talk about your background a little bit. So how long have you been playing fantasy? And if you had to choose one of your favorite armies, what is it?
Let's see. I started with fantasy back when I was 15. That was in 2005. So about 15 years now altogether. I started in 2004 with the Lord of the Rings miniatures, collected like a whole bunch of them, built like a scale miniature replica of Minas Tirith with the Pelennor fields and everything like that. So it's kind of a fun project for a nerdy 14-year-old.
Yeah, so you were 14 in 2005?
Yeah, I'll be 30 next year. So I don't know, maybe I'm a bit younger than most people think, though people say I look a lot younger than I actually am. So
yeah, dude, I thought you were about 18.
Yeah, I heard that too. But no,
you're one youthful looking dude.
Yeah, they say the same about my girlfriend. So I guess we're blessed with those Scandinavian/Asian genes.
That's pretty impressive to write such a. I mean, this is a huge project that you undertook, and to be able to complete it. You know, I'm not saying young people can't complete awesome projects, but it's just very cool to know that someone at your age, a couple years younger than us, is able to focus and actually complete something that is awesome for the hobby.
Yeah, 100%. I can't imagine. I think it's probably partly due because of my age that I've been able to actually do so much work on it. Because when I started this around 2010 or so, I was a student back in university, and I had a lot of free time on my hands essentially because there wasn't really that much time in class. So yeah, I pretty much set a lot of time aside for that and video games.
Yeah, who studies?
Yeah, who studies exactly? Yeah, no wonder why I dropped out.
You said 2010, so you actually started this before the end times. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. I started this at the end of 7th ed, actually.
I never knew that.
Good point. Wow, I didn't know that either.
Oh my god, dude.
Why'd you start it before the end times?
Well, I guess that would be part of a later question based on the ones you sent me. But back when I started, it was really the idea that the factions that Games Workshop never really sort of expanded upon, like Araby and the like. I kind of felt that it was a damn shame that you couldn't really play those in the actual game because I'm a huge history buff, and as such I really would like to be able to see the whole armies of Cathay and Kislev and Nippon and Araby playable in the game, and that's pretty much the reason why I started to set out on this back already then.
So what's your favorite army? I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of.
And why is it Dark Elves?
I do actually have a Dark Elf army of about I'm not sure how many points, maybe 7,000 points or something like that.
Yeah,
and,
boy.
I also have my own custom-made Tolaris Dreadbringer model, of course.
Yeah. Stop! I've got to put my pants back on. Hang on.
No, would be the time to leave them off.
Yeah, so I can paint. That's right.
I'm glad we're not doing this on video cam.
Okay, well, is Dark Elves your main, or do you have mostly every army, especially some of the ones that you've discussed of like you wanted to have like your Kislev because you wanted them to get some love?
Yeah, I actually, you have to give me a sec. I have to actually count my armies. I have 5 cabinets behind me with all my miniatures.
Oh wow.
I have, let's see, Empire, Halflings, Kislev, Bretonia, Albion, Dogs of War, Estalia, Araby, Amazons, Norse, Dark Elves, Nippon, Cathay, as well as some miniatures from the Song of Ice and Fire game and some Raging Heroes miniatures as well.
Right.
Wow, so yeah,
it must snow a lot there, Mathias.
It does know a lot.
Good indoor activities.
Yeah, sure.
But
Okay, so
favorite army, let's see. I would probably have to go with Bretonians as my main army. That
Yes.
was my first army back
Oh,
in
wow.
2005. We started with them because, again, huge history buff fan. So like, I
Right.
want to have my Braveheart army essentially. So I started with the Bretonians back then and painted them in the whole horrible orange color scheme that I'm working on repainting nowadays. So I think that Bretonnia would have to be my main army, but otherwise I also have to go with the Dogs of War army, partly
Right.
because I really love those old Perry miniatures from 5th edition.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, I have every single regiment of renown they ever did, except for the Tishihushi, the skin creator ones, because
Oh,
those
yes, of course.
really, yeah, all the models except for those, and many more models that are non-GW models, but yes, 8 shelves total. I think I have about, wait, I check, 200, 400, 600, 800, about 1,500 minis in my Dogs of War army, I think.
wow.
My God, man.
That
So
seems like a lot.
a quick question off the cuff.
Yeah.
Have you played using your Armies Project rules?
Yes, I have on quite a few occasions.
And
started-
how good do they dominate?
They don't really dominate as such, but I do tend to play pretty friendly armies. I don't really do the whole power gaming thing at all. I
fair
like
enough.
to go take a little bit like one unit of this, one unit of that, and so on. Yes, I have a fun balanced army to play around with.
That's what I like to see. I like
Yeah.
fluffy armies like that. One unit each.
Exactly.
Renee's like, no, must crush.
Yeah,
Only
nah,
two
me,
shooters, I guess.
I'm going to be fielding about 20 Galloper guns, thanks very much.
I only have 2 of those.
Okay, so what is your? So you said you've played your Warhammer's Armies project. What's your local like community like? Do you have a decent amount of people? Is there a local meta? But yeah,
Yeah, unfortunately, since the end time sort of started, we haven't really been playing much Warhammer in my city that I know of. It sort of kind of fell apart there, and people lost interest in the game a lot. So essentially, since about 2014-15, I've only really been playing games every now and then with friends at home. So there isn't really that much of a meta. I guess the meta would then probably be based more on the Discord that I have with the Discord server with the blog, where people can
Right.
discuss the rules and play testing and stuff like that, where I get most of the feedback as well. So unfortunately, not much of a Warhammer community as such. But at the same time, if I were to play more games, I wouldn't have time to work on the books anyway. So
nice.
it's not
True.
You know,
really
that's probably my favorite thing about this is that your system is that you don't act like a dictator or something, and you don't make a rule change on the whim. You actually take input from the community, and you make several suggestions for rule updates on the Discord channel, and then you allow people to vote on which rule they think is the best, and then whichever one obviously wins with the most votes is the one you implement. And I just like it because it allows dialogue. It lets the community members actually help build the game rather than just being told what the new rule is.
Yeah, essentially. Like it's not a straightforward vote as such. It's more like, okay, here we have a couple of scenarios that would be possible on how to make a rule, and then I might be thinking, okay, what would be the best route to go here? And then I like to get input from the rest of the community as well. Okay, is this a good idea or is this a terrible idea that I haven't thought through at all? And get input on that. And if it turns out I completely overlooked this part, then I'll have to go back and change it, of course. But
Right.
also in some cases, like, okay, it could either be A or B. I'm not too fussed either way. It's good to get input from the community. Like, which of these ideas would you prefer, essentially? But yeah, I do like to do a lot of discussion with the community. I have done that ever since 2010 because it's so easy to overlook bugs and other imbalances or possible cheese combinations that it's so easy to miss them when you do all the work by yourself. So having the community for help is a godsend, more or less.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's something we actually touched on with Matt Ward the same kind of way. The idea of if you are the overreaching last final say in your own work, you're gonna miss stuff.
Yeah.
Having it vetted by like a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, in your case, 2,000 pairs of eyes, you end up with your best product, and it really shows. Like your rules, I would have to say, probably even more balanced than GW's rules. And I guess it's because of the extensive playtesting. You've got so many games being played. It's a really good system, really, really robust.
Yeah, that it helps a lot because there's a lot of sort of question marks from the 8th edition, especially that I have tried to fix in my 9th edition book, which means, of course, that even now you still find things like how would we resolve this sort of situation, and then you have to try and think of a way to sort of formulate that in the book so that there's no question marks, so there can't be any real discussion on how to interpret a certain rule. There's a lot of stuff like that GW really dropped the ball on, which I have dropped the ball on myself on occasions, but the difference, I guess, is that I can go back and change that and update it.
Yeah, true.
So you mentioned comparing it to like other to GW. Have you played Ninth Age at all? And if so, do you prefer Ninth Age over 8th edition?
I have not actually played the 9th Age. I checked out the main rules a little bit, but that's the thing. That some of them asked me to actually join in the 9th Age project back when it started about 2015. But to me, it's kind of like I felt it felt like it kind of soulless, more or less, because back then they had really bad names for everything as well. They have improved on that a lot though. But I remember I wrote a blog post about that as well. How I think Woodlands were sort of like Elves of Nature or something like that. It was super generic names, and you couldn't get any feel for the game whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that was part of the reason why I decided to not join into the 9th Age product in general, because I felt that it's not Warhammer, it's just pseudo Warhammer. So I think that the main rules themselves are probably pretty solid. I haven't really seen anything in the main rules that I think is terrible or anything like that. But it's more like the whole game world around them. It just hasn't really taken speed yet and really became its own thing. And I see it still on the 9th Age forum. I check in there now and again and see what the status on the books are. And I don't know, it still feels like they haven't really managed to get more than 4 books out yet in 4 years. So that's kind of what I was worried about as well when they started it, that it's probably gonna lose steam and probably not even go anywhere. They have gone further than I thought they would, but I'm still not at a level where I think that this is a complete product yet. So I guess if you ask me if I prefer it over 9th edition, I'd say that I only played 8th edition in this case. So yeah, I would prefer 8th edition overall based on the lore. But I think that rules-wise, 9th Age might actually be better, at least for the main rules, but probably not the army books as well, because they really removed like all the fun random stuff to make a more of a tournament-based game.
Yeah, I think, and I hear that a lot in the community. We often, get to talking about 9th Age because it really is the spiritual successor to Warhammer by the community, and so many people say they don't play it for the exact same reason. They say it's soulless. They say there's no story, there's no passion, nothing you can kind of get your heart and soul into. And I do believe that they're slowly coming along, but at the end of the day, I think it was more driven by tournament players for tournament players, and they're slowly getting around to doing the fluffy stuff that we all know and love.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll hope to see it shape up in the future. I'm still a bit hesitant about it, but can keep our fingers crossed that they will manage to develop that game and become the successor that they always wanted it to be.
Yeah, there's definitely a community here in the States that plays. Obviously, it's a huge country, so it's easy to have that. But nothing really local for me that plays 9th Age. But there are definitely plenty of people that play it and enjoy it. I've read some of the rules, and it's very straightforward. I haven't really found any issues with it. But I agree that the lore, what drew me to Warhammer Fantasy is the lore. So it just keeps me around. And I know for copyright rules, they had to change everything, which is fair. But I think the only thing I dislike about 9th Age is, I like a lot. Don't get me wrong. I love a lot of it. But just on what I dislike is not having named characters. You miss those characters that you loved playing with for 20, 30 years or whatever.
Yeah. There's just nothing to really attach you to the game world as of yet. So that's my main issue with it. I guess can't really get inspired by reading the 9th Age rules as it is. So
that's fair.
That's why I prefer to stick to the Warhammer world, in short.
So we pretty much already asked how long you've been working on the project, but what is it? Why don't you just give like a brief overview of what is Warhammer Armies Project?
Yeah, it's probably a good question, because I checked for the blog and I realized that I never actually wrote a post about what the Warhammer Armies Project is. It just starts with, multiple updates coming. Okay. But essentially, the Warhammer Armies Project started off, as I mentioned, as a way to expand upon those armies and factions that GW never really did anything with, so to speak. And that's what they did for the first 5 years or so. And then in 2015, the game or the project kind of went on hiatus because around 2014 you had like the last Wood Elves book, it dropped then, and after that you had no more fantasy books for a while. You had the End Times books, and at that time I kind of lost interest in playing the game a lot because I never read the End Times books myself. I just checked them like, okay, well, what is this, like the Storm of Chaos again? So, but during that time, I had like a big hiatus with nothing really happened on the blog. I mentioned as such that I might not have time to really do more work on the projects, and it's been fun while it's lasted, but it might not be any more than the book's already made. But then when they decided to, implode or explode the Warhammer world, essentially, I kind of decided to, like, okay, well, no, it was actually then I decided to bring the project back, so to speak, because at that point it was like, well, I don't really want to play Age of Sigmar with the Sigmarines and everything, and I didn't think that the Ninth Age looked that interesting either, due to the fact that they changed all the names and the lore and everything. So I decided that I would try and pick up where 8th edition left off and go and update both the Skaven book and the Beastman book. I already done a Bretonnia update in 2012 because I played Bretonians and I didn't want to do the 6th ed rules because they're pretty outdated at this point.
I'm glad you updated those. Those look great, by the way.
Yeah, I played that book, the new one, several times. It's much more fun than the 6th one for sure, especially because I can have a lot more peasants. I love my peasants. They're terrible, but gosh, I love them. Yeah.
The plight of the common man.
Indeed. Yeah, but
I mean, just being a peasant in this world, oh gosh, that'd be so awful. Like, you're not making it past 25. You're just done. There's no way. It's impossible.
Yeah, pretty much. And you get to keep 1/10 of everything you make, which I guess is not that dissimilar from Sweden, but.
Yes, but Sweden's got free healthcare, so it's more than the peasants have.
Yeah, more or less. We have a little bit better than the Bretonians, I suppose.
You said you started doing this after 7th. So
yes.
When is that right?
Yeah, the end of 7th edition. I started in 2009, originally with the Dogs of War book, actually.
Okay. So when 8th edition hit,
yep.
Were you still writing? Were you just kind of making up your own rules because obviously the 8th edition rule books were like codexes were being dropped. So
yep.
Did you have to rewrite everything that you had written for 7th edition, post 7th edition, and then had to like?
Yes.
Okay. Was that annoying?
Not that much. Actually, I had a lot of fun working on it. I had a huge, how to say it? I mean, I remember the Norse book. I finished the Norse book in about 2 days. I sat pretty much 2 days straight and just worked on the Norse book. That's, of course, I didn't really write everything in the lore in it. Most of the lore comes from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay,
sure.
Because that's the thing with most of the books. I've written parts of it myself, but the majority of the lore is based on either existing Warhammer material or it's heavily edited from other various sources, other fan-made material or other RPG books. Because frankly, had I sat down and tried to write everything from scratch by myself, I would not be able to do everything in this short amount of time. That would have just been impossible.
That's fair.
Is it also the fact that you are in fact also a Norseman in real life and you know exactly what to say and how they think and how they fight?
Well, kinda. I mean, I do certainly have Norse heritage, and I also have, of course, a statue of Odin and Freya in my living room, and plus the obligatory Viking axe hanging across the TV.
And you're probably like 6'6" and all that good stuff.
6'2", actually, but fairly tall still.
Isn't the height over there super? Isn't everyone like super tall in Sweden?
Yeah, I wouldn't say super tall. I guess the average height is about 6 feet or something like that. So I'm more than average height. But
no, Blue, you're getting them mixed up. All the chicks are super hot.
now that one I could probably agree with more. Just don't let my hair grow and say.
Because the Vikings went and stole all the hot women and took them back up north.
Yep.
Generally, how that worked.
Rape and pillaging.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously we kind of know what inspired you to do this. It's when GW wasn't given the attention to certain armies that you wanted to give attention to.
Yeah, essentially.
So why did you start rewriting all of the other ones? Obviously, it makes sense for you to write, Norska or updating even some of the older books. But what inspired you to actually rewrite, like, boom, a High Elf Codex for 8th edition drops? Why did you choose to rewrite that instead of just, using the 8th edition book and only using your books for the ones that haven't been released yet?
Well, essentially because there were a lot of issues I felt with the official books, like Old Strike's First for All Elves was a rule that just seemed like a crutch rather than fixing the integral problems with the book. And they also had issues like Banner of the World Dragon, of course, and other similar things like that.
Right.
So with 8th edition books, there's generally less things I had to go back and change because, I mean, most of the rules are solid. I don't think there was not a need to go back and rewrite the whole thing, and so I didn't really do that. It's more like fix imbalances to try and improve the internal balance of the book to make sure that all units are worth taking, or at the very least are not bad choices in general. Some would still be more of a fluff choice, so to speak, but in generally speaking, I think that I have hopefully done a little bit of a better job at making it so that you're not just going to feel that this sort of unit is just something that you never want to include in your book because it's just point by point so much worse than another choice in the book, essentially. But it was also because that when the Games Workshop destroyed the old world, so to speak, I knew that, okay, there's never going to be an update to fix these issues. So this is what we got. It's never going to be better or worse than what we have in 8th edition. But I think that I could certainly try to make it better than it was right now by fixing the issues that other people have mentioned for years with those books, but that would now never get an official update to fix it from GW. Yeah. So that was pretty much it.
Not to put words or feelings in your mouth, but did you also have some kind of feeling of you don't want your game to die? You don't want to lose your game. So you yourself wanted to, fight against the decline and keep it relevant?
Kind of, yeah. But like I mentioned, back then around 2014-15, I didn't really play the game that much myself. So a lot of the stuff I'm doing right now is really just for the community to be able to keep playing the game. So I do it because it's fun, but I don't actually use the rules that much myself. I play a couple of games. I think it's only a couple of games a year nowadays, actually. So it's very little that I do it for my own sake nowadays.
Yeah.
I used to only play a couple of games a year, but now that SquareHammer has taken off, man, I am putting in a lot of time playing games. I couldn't be happier.
Yeah,
Blue plays 2 a day. and then if he can't get 2 a day, and he'll just play with himself.
Oh,
okay. You had that one lined up, didn't you? I mean, I do both. It's fine.
At the same time.
Have you ever played against? So if you don't play that, you say you don't play very often. So when you do play those couple times a year, I assume you are using your own books, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. That's mainly for playtesting purposes as well. I want to see what works and what doesn't. Like the Arabic book, for instance, one of the first editions of it, the first versions of it, had a lot more special rules, and you were kind of sitting there. Oh wait, okay, this unit does this, and no wait, I have to do this one with this thing, and this one this, and like come on. So after a while, I realized that I gotta streamline this shit. It's way too many rules to remember, and since then I try to do the same for other books as well. So it's streamline things a little bit more, so it's a bit less of a hassle. And that's been one of the main issues I think with many fan-made stuff over the years, which is also why fan-made stuff has had sort of a bad ring to it. When people say, "Oh, I played this fan-made book," and people just go, "Ugh," because a lot of fan-made stuff is really poorly balanced and it's just way over the top with what they try to do. Because usually the person working on the book gets a little bit too overzealous or overambitious with this particular army, so they tend to give them all the best stuff. And that's kind of what I try to do, which is good that I'm working on all the books, because then I can't really pick favorites as such. I try to give all books the same fair treatment when it comes to power levels, essentially. But again, to get back to the question, I played against most of my books. I think I played against Bretonia, Halflings, Kislev. I played with Albion, Cathay, Nippon, Norse, Amazons. Yeah, I played all of the armies that I collect, at least. Estalia as well, Dogs of War a couple of times. And it was kind of fun. It was back in the old Warhammer group in my city. There was one guy who actually played the Dogs of War army book.
Okay.
The one I made for 8th edition. Right. And like I was like, "Oh, you played the Dogs of War book? You think you like it? Is it good? You enjoy playing it?" And you're like, "Yeah, it's okay, I guess." So
Try not to get too much bias one way or the other.
yeah, kind of. But I played against the books myself, but it hasn't really been that I've come upon a person that have just been playing my books out of the blue, so to speak, other than that Dogs of War player. But at the same time, it's not a huge city I live in. It's about 80,000 people in all, so we don't have a gigantic Warhammer community as such either.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the books, you have rules for units that don't actually have official models. Do you have any recommendations of third-party models that you feel fit the units and their rules?
Yes, in most cases I would say I do. I think on the blog I did post like a list of sort of alternative manufacturers. It's mainly for the books that I've made myself,
Right.
but I haven't really started too much yet with other alternative Empire or Bretonnia. Well, I have for Bretonnia, but not for like Empire or Tomb Kings or Chaos stuff like that yet. I'll probably do it eventually as well. Do you mean like more for the sort of official GW armies, because I've added a few more units there that don't have official models, or do you mean mainly for the completely unofficial armies?
I would say both, because there are definitely some units that don't have a model. So it's like for ogres, I think you have it's like some kind of Rhinox chariot. I can't remember exactly the name of it, but for Ogre Kingdoms you have a Rhinox chariot, and obviously it doesn't have a cannon on it. So I wasn't sure if you just used, I don't know, I just wasn't sure if you had like a model in mind. Like if you had a third-party model in mind that you were looking at, and you're like, okay, I want to make a rule for that unit right there that fits perfectly for Empire, or man, that would be a perfect chaos. That'd be a perfect chaos unit. Let me make rules for it.
All right. I think that depends. Usually it's like I can see a piece of art more often than that, and I think like, okay, I really want to include something based on that. Like the Rhinox stretch, for instance, there's an art piece about that in the Ogre Kingdoms book actually, and it's sort of in the background, and I kind of felt like, okay, that would be a cool thing to include, so I just did. But you would really have to sort of convert it from an arrow blaster, I would think, in this case, to make it work, unless you want to scratch build one, of course. But it really differs. In some cases, I have models in mind. Other cases, it's just really based on things that are mentioned in the lore, or like that have some hint in the background or something like that in the art. Or like the dwarves, they have their grudge breaker, I think you call it, like a giant sort of dwarf steam tank kind of thing, which is based on a piece of art from the 8th edition rulebook, but of course doesn't have an official model. But I think you can actually find third-party models that would be quite suiting for it as well. So for the most part, you can find suitable models. It's just not something that I always have in mind when I make up a new unit or rules for it.
Okay. So do you play Warhammer Total War?
I have about 200 hours into it, so I could say yes.
So you're a noob. I got it.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm a total noob. Yeah.
And Rene, you play that too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Only Dark Elves though.
No, come
Or
on.
Lucas.
Please tell me you play other factions.
Yes, of course. I also play Hageneth. I play Loki Felhart, and I have been known to play Marathi.
You're so ridiculous. I have a feeling that if you do play any of the other factions, you just put it on Legendary and let yourself get destroyed.
Yeah, by the
Pretty, by the Dark Elves.
Exactly. Okay, so
I'll
Mathias,
play the Exiles of Neck and just like march north.
Yes.
So either way, you win, even if you lose.
What's your favorite faction to play in Total War, Mathias?
Well, I started with Bretonnia naturally, but otherwise I'd probably say Empire, because I think they have the most variation. I think I finished the campaign for every faction in the first game. I have finished the High Elf faction campaign in the second one. I'm halfway through a Dark Elf campaign right now as Malekith.
Yeah, boy.
Trying to confederate all at once. I got, I think I have Morathi and Crown Helleborn so far. I'm still working on getting Lokir to my side. Haven't really encountered him yet though. But
did you go south to Lustria, or did you hop over to Uthwan?
Neither as of yet. I'm working on consolidating Nagoroth for starters, and when
Okay.
I'm done with that one, I'm gonna expand depending on who attacks me first. Essentially, I try to play it a little bit more defensively, unless there's like, oh, I want that piece of terrain
Property.
or settlement or something like that.
Okay. So are there any units in that game that you're planning to add to your rule set? Like anything like maybe or are there any units you'd like to see in Warhammer Old World? So
On
two
the
questions. First one
yeah.
is any units that are in the video game that you're planning to include in your rules, and any of those units that you'd like to see in Warhammer the Old World.
Yes, absolutely. I think I have included a few of them already. Let's see, for Dark Elves, if we'll start there, I am working on including the whole, what do you call them, like Dread Knights or something. That would be the Barded Cold ones. But essentially, that's just going to be a barding option for the Cold One Knights and the Dark Elf books, so nothing too fancy. Then you have the Norse.
Cool.
Yeah, the Norse will get a few units as well. I think most of them are already in my Norse book, actually, since before Norse dropped in the Warhammer War game, though, when it comes to like the Snow Trolls and the Frost Strike and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I did include a few more units in the Warriors of Chaos book, like the Marauder Hunters and like Elite Marauders and stuff like that.
Right. The Berserkers. A lot of Berserkers.
Exactly. And I am also planning a what do you call it again? Zombie Pirates of the Vampire Coast expansion in maybe a year or so. So then I will include like all the Vampire units from the game will be included in that one. I mean, it's based on the White Dwarf list, of course, so I will use a mix of both as the source there to make that list, essentially. But for the most part, whenever CA have included a new unit, I have also tried to include the same units into one of the books. Maybe apart from some of the real monsters, because they have a lot of like these Feral Carnosaur and everything like that, and I kind of felt like it's a little bit boring just to include the same unit again.
Right. So I'm scrolling through the Empire one right now for 9th. And I'm trying to see, because I remember on our past podcast, I believe Rene brought up what was it? What'd you bring up for Empire from Warhammer?
Was it Empire, or was I talking about the Griffin Hippogriff Knights, the Royal Hippogriff Knights from Bretonia?
Oh, that's right. That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Though I actually included those, I think, 4 years before they dropped in Warhammer War.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, that's my unit.
What I really like was the Snake Ladies for the Dark Elves.
Oh yeah, the Medusa or the Melusai from Age of Sigmar.
Yeah. The new Snake Bow Lady chicks.
Melusai and Inurai, I think it's pronounced.
That's it. Yeah. I was looking at doing a bit of a fluffy themey Gond list up, just a 2,000 point small list, and I was going to use those girls as my bolt throwers, because obviously they don't have any kind of rules in 8th edition. But then, bam, you get there and drop this book, and I'm like, oh, I can actually use them. Nice.
Yeah, sure. I bought a box of those myself, both the Kinneret and the Melusai, because those are cool. I want to have those in my army.
Yeah, and that's right, and they're really themey for a Gond list as well. Like, they're all about the Medusas up there.
Yeah, exactly. Currently, also waiting for two boxes of Sister Slaughter in the post. Maybe it will come today, maybe tomorrow, so I can.
Oh, they're gorgeous. I love Sisters. I love Sisters so much.
Yeah, I think that's about the only unit I haven't really bought yet, because mainly because I didn't like the ball look too much. But maybe I try to convert them with Witch of Hair or something like that. We'll see. Regardless, I had some extra space in my cabinet, so I figured, why not?
Man, violent bald women are sexy. It's all good, dude. It's all good.
All right. I'll take your word for it.
So so if you created the Royal Hippogriff Knights, obviously years before the game created, like the Warhammer Total War curated it, what do you have any proxies for that model?
Not as of yet, unfortunately. I think you would have to buy. Yeah, you could probably go with some regular Knights of the Realm and buy some loose Hippogriff molds and just mount them on that one. But it will take some conversion work to make it really look good. I'm hoping that some other third-party sort of manufacturer will make them eventually, though. There are a few that are made not Bretonians or non-Bretonians, so to speak. So they might make some in the future. So other than that, you probably have to convert as it is right now.
Because right now they're monstrous cavalry, I think, right? They're just like They're not flying cavalry like Pegasus, but they're probably on the same base size.
A little bit bigger, I would say, but it's really up to you. I did put like base sizes in my 9th edition book, essentially saying that okay, this base size is allowed for this troop type and so on. So you could really put them on whatever the hell base size you like, as long as it follows those guidelines or rules.
I guess if you took the Empire Demigriffs and found them some cool wings, you might be able to use those.
Yeah, it could work.
And hooves. And rear hooves.
Hooves, yeah, of course. I think the armor might be a little bit of an issue, but yeah, it could work. It could work. I might go for some third-party hippogriffs myself if I want to make that unit. The problem right now is mainly I don't really have any more space in my cabinet. I have to sell stuff to buy new stuff because I promised my girlfriend that okay, once I fill these 40 shelves in these 5 cabinets, I'm not gonna buy more.
Oh, you made that big mistake of the promising.
Yeah.
I don't promise anything.
Yeah, I'm thinking it as well, but I mean, I have about 8,000 models already, so I think that enough has to be enough at some point.
Okay, so have you ever wanted to create? So we talked about the units you do have that you want to be there, but what units would you like to see? What models or units would you like to see released? Obviously, with this new news from GW about Warhammer: The Old World.
From Total War, you mean?
Yeah, are there any brand new units that have never been released that you'd like to see? Maybe some of the ones that you created that they'll make a model for now.
Yeah, well, Hippogriff Knights obviously, but
Sure.
other than that, I guess like the Dwarven Grudgebreaker would be pretty cool too. But sorry, that one is not really in Total War. I think. Yeah, I think,
can just from your books. It doesn't have to be just from
in that case, I would say like the Dwarven Grudgebreaker, because that would just be really cool to have a Dwarven pseudo steam tank, like an ancestor god made from metal and stone with 2 giant hammer arms that smashes everything. That would be pretty cool.
That'd be insane.
Yeah. Oh, and the Dwarf Zeppelin as well.
A lot of Dark Elves.
Yeah, more Dark Souls would be cool, I guess. I mean, like I said, I have pretty much all the models already, so I don't really need more myself, but yeah, essentially everything that doesn't have a current model would be nice to see when they do re-release the old world in the future. I don't really have super high hopes for it as of right now. I think it's going to be more of a specialist game, but I guess we'll have to wait and see what will come out of it.
So that's exactly. I was going to get into that. What do you think you will see? Do you think it will be a 30K black book kind of thing? So it will be its own specialist game just on Forge World. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please. Say
Okay. Most likely, I think it's going to be sort of a smaller game. I was thinking that maybe it's going to be like the sort of square bases, square movement trays with the round bases. But at the same time, they have really made a big fuss of showcasing square bases, so they probably will actually be on square bases. But I think as a game, I'm not sure it's going to be that much or get that much support from GW overall, because Fantasy was scrapped because it didn't really sold well enough, from what I understand. But it's possible again that if it sells really well, they will expand upon it a lot and do a lot more plastic kits for it, based on the success of Warhammer Total War mainly, and Vermintide as well. So I'm very cautiously optimistic about it, but I don't think it's not really going to affect the work I'm doing right now, because now I've gotten to the point anyway that even if GW releases updated rules for all the books, I'm probably still just gonna have a look at them, use it as a baseline, and then edit it until I feel that it's become better. Similarly, how like you have people in Total War making mods for that one, for the base game.
Gotcha.
I'll probably just keep doing sort of a modded version of Warhammer the Old World as well, if the main rules are good. Otherwise, I'm just gonna keep playing 9th edition or update it to 10th edition eventually, maybe. It depends on how much time I'll have left on my hands.
Okay. So you would obviously rebalance everything with your own books.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
So GW rules are good as a baseline, but there are that are not very good, and that's essentially what I'm trying to fix by fixing the internal balance mainly, and fixing points cost and Banner the World Dragon again. Cough, cough.
Yeah. What was that, like a 2-up ward save versus magic and other shenanigans?
Yeah, against all magical attacks. So
yeah.
That would be the whole Demons of Chaos army. Not that I'm shedding too many tears for Demons of Chaos. Like I said, still pissed about the 7th ed book, but
not just that. You can also drop the Everqueen in there for a 3-up ward save versus the rest of everything, and it just gets ridiculous.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, 7th Ed Demons. That was definitely the most broken codex of that edition.
Yeah. I played them in the Grand Swedish Championship in 2000 and I think 9 or something like that.
Mhm.
I played Dogs of War, the official 6th Ed rules from 2001.
Oh man.
Wow.
I started packing my army into the case by turn 2. So yeah, not a great game.
Nope. So on that subject of Warhammer the Old World, if GW was to reach out to you and asked you to work on Warhammer the Old World project, what would you do?
I had actually thought about that, and I considered applying for work at GW at the time. But I think what kind of kept me back would be, apart from probably having to move to Nottingham as well. I'm not sure how much creative freedom I would be allowed to have, because one thing that's really annoying is when you have to do a collaboration project and have to work and sort of get into agreement with everyone. It's practically impossible. That's not saying I like to be a dictator and make all decisions by myself, but in some cases it's like, okay, I feel very strongly about this sort of rule or this sort of unit, and you can't get an agreement from everyone, and then it's just going to be kind of a pissy attitude about the whole thing, I suppose. But overall, I think, yeah, if GW were to reach out to me and say, okay, we want you to work on the old world, you're going to have a reasonable amount of creative freedom, and you can probably do most of the work at home or through Skype or something like that. Yeah, I'd probably say yes to that.
Okay, so I know.
Yeah, nice.
Okay, that makes sense. Because you did say that you don't really get to play a lot now, but now you'd like to update the rules and everything so the community gets to keep playing.
Yeah, exactly.
So to have someone with your creative, if GW asked you, I'm not saying they are, because that'd be cool, but if they did, I would like you to accept it, because then you could make the game more balanced for everyone else in the community.
Yeah, hopefully. I don't think it's gonna really ever get to that point, though. I mean, I've spoken a little bit to Andy Hoare, I think. And Andy Hoare back in 2010 when I released the Amazon book. So I had been in contact with at least one old GW developer, but other than that, they never really reached out to me directly as such.
Okay. Okay, so have you ever wanted to create an entire new faction? Like, that's not in the old world, it's not in Warhammer, that you just wanted to create, like you thought this would be cool to have this type of faction or this type of army? Have you ever wanted to create something brand new?
You mean something brand new for the Warhammer world then that's never really been mentioned in the lore before?
Yeah.
Yeah, either never been in the lore or something that has never been created itself. So both.
Well, I guess that it's never been in the lore, I probably have to say no, because I feel like then I'm not really working with the canon. I don't really like to sort of include a new faction just out of the blue. I've seen other people do it with sort of like an insect army or like a whole dragon army, stuff like that, and I just really can't get into it because it's such an obvious fan thing to do that doesn't really have any base in the Warhammer world. But on the other thing, like making a faction based on imagination that's mentioned in the lore, I mean, that's kind of what I've done with the half of the project, essentially, like with Nippon and Cathay and stuff like that. So based on that question, I would say, yeah, sure.
Okay, so I think we have a couple questions from the community that we've
actually got a lot, because I've got those questions here that Kyle had. Yeah.
Okay,
so I might jump in with these because these are some really cool questions.
Yeah.
What opportunities do you see for armies beyond those currently served with the books?
Yeah, let's see. Do you mean like? Could you repeat the question?
So what opportunities do you see for armies beyond those that you've currently written about in the books? So all your peripheral stuff. So like, is there your brave hardy kind of stuff up north, and then you've got all the stuff from down south that we haven't really even touched yet, like those real deep south beastmen and things like that.
Okay, yeah, like making more armies essentially, I guess.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about it that much. I mean, I have my list on projects that I'm still working on or planning to do in the future. I think it's about, let's see, let me have a quick look here. The predicted release order is up to 48 projects as of right now.
Whoa,
So
that's insane.
Is that all? Come on.
Yeah. maybe more in the future, but I think it will really depend on how much time I will have in the future as well. But I mean, like I said, I have the zombie pirates planned. I have an expansion planned for Nagash as well. Gnoblar Hordes, the Femur will get a small expansion.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna make probably a small expansion for the Border Princess, Monsters Arcanum, Priests of the Old World, Colors of Magic.
Nice.
And then I'm also working on compiling old Siege material, skirmish scenarios, Storm of Chaos, Dark Shadows, Conquest of the New World, Nemesis Crown, and stuff like that. Those are just going to be compilations essentially, but I'm looking more forward to working on the other expansions for Nagash and the gang, so to speak.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Siege because I see that's number 39 on your list going down.
Yeah, it's going to be a while until I get there.
That's fair because I love Siege games because that is what, for me, not only obviously huge battles with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of troops going at it, but just having a Siege. That's just some of the artwork is what really, I guess, made me fall in love with Siege. The artwork of many of the GW books when Empire is being sieged and you just see this huge monstrous freaking castle and fortress. It's just cool to see to me.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. The art is really what inspires you to, or inspired me to do a lot of the whole thing. Because I mean, I can't tell about the amount of hours I spent looking through all the various GW publications, fan-made art, and white dwarfs and everything like that. Just trying to discover every single piece of GW art. I have about 100 gigs worth on my external hard drive just of art and
Just a little bit on that same question from my point of view. Have you ever considered, and being a history buff, do you know much about the Celtic legends of Ireland and Scotland, the Firbolg and the Tooth of Danann?
A little bit. I wouldn't say I'm a huge. I don't know a huge amount of actual Scotland and Ireland in general. I mainly focused on like the high medieval ages, like England, France, Germany, Italy, the Crusades and stuff like that.
Would you consider drawing on? Yeah. Would you consider drawing on those Celtic, like really early Celtic ideas for anything in your world, your project?
Yeah, sure. Actually, some of them are included in the Albion book already, and there's also a few influences from there that goes into the Femur book as well.
Now that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do the Albion and Femur books together.
Yeah, probably should have a look at them. The Femur book, of course, is not out yet. It's going to be just a smaller expansion for them later on, but the Albion book is about 100 pages, so you have a lot of lore there based on Celtic mythology and stuff like that.
I haven't actually seen the Albion book, but that'd be cool.
Well, then you have lots of reading to do.
Yeah, I certainly do. I must admit, I jumped to the Dark Elf first, and then moved to Talia and Astalia and that.
All right.
So the next question is really interesting, and I whoever asked this is an absolute legend. What do you intend to do with the material when you've reached a point or a position when you can't continue to edit? Do you have a legacy plan?
I have considered it a few times actually, like what will happen at some point where, like I said, I probably will not be able to do this forever, so to speak. Right now, I don't really have any kids at the moment. Planning on it in the next few years. So I'm guessing I might have a little bit less time to work on the books by then. But I think that if I actually get to a point where I feel that, okay, I'm not going to be able to really do any work on the books anymore, I'm probably just going to release all the original docs I have, sort of an open source thing, so everybody can download them and edit them themselves. So if there's some rule they don't like or want to change, they can go ahead and do that in their own gaming group, so to speak.
Are there any guys, any core groups on your Discord that you think would do the entire project justice?
Hard to say, because we have a lot of various or differing opinions there. Like some people agree with this, some people agree with that, some people don't agree at all. I think it would be hard to me to say that, okay, this particular person would be the right person to sort of carry on the torch, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have people obviously who help me with lots of input and ideas and stuff like that, and some I agree with, some I don't agree with, and I don't think I would just give everything away to just one person. I'd rather let everybody be able to have the original material then and just do whatever they want with it, essentially.
A real Alexander the Great style. Just give it to your generals. That's good, man. That's good.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah. That's good. Do you have any plans to collaborate with anyone for this or another project? We touched on Games Workshop, but anyone a little less corporate?
I mean, I have done some collaborations on some books I made, like the Orkim's book and the Pirates of Sartosa book in general, as well as the Dogs of War book, which was the first one I actually made. Because the Dogs of War book actually was back in 2009, and that actually sort of ties into the origin story of the Warhammer Armies Project, which I didn't really get into that much. Because back in 2009, when I was still a scrawny teenager, I decided to start playing a Dogs of War army, and as a 19-year-old, trying to collect an army made completely out of metal was not the most economically feasible solution. But I still decided, what the hell, I'll do it. But I also, of course, wanted to play with some rules that didn't outright suck. And the Dogs of War rules back in 2010 they weren't great. They weren't great in 6th edition, and they certainly weren't great in 7th and 8th edition. So I found this forum, Dogs of War Online. It's now defunct because nobody really uses it after the demise of Warhammer Fantasy. But they decided then when I joined it that they were going to do an update for the book. And I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be in on that project. And I was kind of sort of just a sort of side guy there. Like I gave input, but I was not one of the main guys who worked on it. But I became more involved in the project, and as other guys dropped off from the project, I eventually sort of became like head developer of it.
Wow.
And when we released it, I really felt like, well, this is a lot of fun. I would like to keep doing this, but for the other books. So I kind of worked on Araby side at the same time. And Araby was also because it was an army that I wanted to do myself. I wanted to play Araby myself. So that's why I really put a lot of emphasis on working on that book first. And when I finished that one, I published it, got a lot of really good feedback on it. Though, I mean, I looked back, I found an old version of it. I mean, the old version looks like by today's standards. I mean, I'm surprised it got so good feedback as it did back then, because it looks really amateurish. But after the Araby book, essentially, I decided like, okay, well, Kislev are pretty cool too, right? I'll probably like to do a Kislev book.
Oh yeah.
So I did that as well. I found the material from like the Realm of the Ice Queen, and essentially just compile a whole book on that, about 150 pages. And that was all because I wanted to collect a Kislev army made up of 3 units, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And after that, it just kept going. Like, okay, well, that was also fun. What else could I do? Like, well, Cathay would be cool. I didn't really have any plans to start a Cathay army, but I did the book anyway. And then, of course, I did start a Cathay army afterwards. And then you had Nippon, Norse, Albion, Amazon's Albion. Albion. No, but Amazon's Pirates of Sartosa, Chaos Dwarves, Hobgoblins, Halflings. Yeah, you name it. But it was really just because of it was fun to work on the books, essentially.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of became your Warhammer in the end. I guess without a large pool of people to play with.
Yeah.
It was basically down to painting and rules development. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Painting I've done a lot of, even if I have troubles deciding on a paint scheme and keeps repainting everything all the time. So I still have way too much stuff left to paint. I think I probably finished about 27 years after I'm dead. So yeah.
That's all right. That way your grandkids can play with painted armies.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Yeah, that's why we do this, right? For the children.
Exactly. That's what.
Yeah.
No, go on.
I kind of went a little bit off topic there. As for the whole collaboration thing, like I said, the Dogs of War book was like the first collaboration I really did, and after that, I kind of decided to just do my own thing when it came to the other books. Like I said, still accepting inputs, but I prefer to be able to work more by myself in general, because it's a lot less discussions about having to agree on everything, like I mentioned before. But I have done some collaborations with other people where I've sort of had like the last word, so to speak. But I don't really have any plans right now to do any other collaboration, unless, of course, it will be with GW or C or something like that. But I guess that's kind of a little bit of a pipe dream. I'm not really expecting anything from it. But might check with Andy Hordo just in case.
Yeah. A little side question here that isn't actually written down. What are the rules going to be for the model for the Empire called the Mad Me Meister of Midtime?
Oh yeah. I have not had too much time to think about that, but that does seem like a fun character. I had to make some special based around and swearing and being able to have like a flaming attack, obviously through that's gonna be
and some form of troll regeneration.
yeah, true regeneration, indeed. Absolutely. Probably wielding a giant bread claymore.
That's
perfect.
Oh my god! Oh, good. I'll be looking out for that and building an army around him, and some kind of dark elf slave chick on on his hip. Do you plan to release rule sets for AOS armies?
Yes and no. For some of them, I guess this means would be to make rules for the armies made for Age of Sigmar, but for Warhammer Fantasy. In which case I've sort of done that, not as a complete army by themselves, but rather incorporate them into the already existing armies where I think the models have been suitable. That's why the Kharadron Overlords have not been included, because they just look too steampunkish compared to the other dwarves, whereas the Dark Elf models look just fine in a Dark Elf army.
You could possibly roll them into Skaven.
Yeah, you mean the dwarves? Yeah, it kind of looks Skaven-ish, I guess, if you shave the beards, but shame the dwarf beard, we're not going to joke about that. I think though, yeah, like you have the new Nagash Mortarks, like the Ossiarch Bone Reapers.
Bone Reapers,
yeah. I think I'll probably make rules for those for the Nagash expansion, just for people who want to use them. Like I know everybody doesn't like the models, but I think they kind of work as something that has been reassembled by Nagash. So yeah, I'll probably make rules for those as a standalone army based around Nagash essentially. And other than that, though, it's kind of hard to say. I'm not really planning on doing anything about the Deepkin because they're a little bit too far out there. I have been thinking about Fishman army, but they're not really fishmen. So yeah,
they're fish elves.
Fish elves, exactly. Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed when I saw that because I was hoping they would do like a Cthulhu-style Fishman army. That would have been way cooler.
Yeah, man, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'm a massive fan of Cthulhu. I think that would be really cool, and you could do some amazing leadership-based special rules there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm not sure how much Cthulhu-like it will actually be though, because there is one precedent with the Triton Lord from Man of War, which is more like what's it called, like Neptune or something like that. Like the king of the ocean.
Poseidon?
Yeah, kind of like Poseidon or Neptune, depending if you want to go with the Roman or Greek term.
Right.
But other than that, it's like it's on a model by model basis essentially. Like if I see a model for Age of Sigmar that I like and think would fit into the old world, I will include rules for it. If it's just too far out there, I'm not really gonna bother.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like it's, as we were talking about before, like it's right now it's your passion, it's your hobby. If you were forced to make rules for something you didn't really think would fit, I don't think you'd get the same nice the same enjoyment out of it, and so that'd be reflected in the work as well, I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I might also, and I have considered it, doing rules for the Stormcast, but that would really just be a rule set, like no lore or anything like that, and that would only be to allow people to use those models in the Warhammer Fantasy Battle setting. I'm not gonna try and shoehorn them into the setting in any way. It would just be like, okay, you want rules for them, here you got rules for them, you can play them if you want now.
now go away.
Take it. Take it and leave. Get out of my face. Yeah, pretty much.
This kind of rolls into our next question. So there must be surely times you get, like, your brain gets oversaturated with Warhammer, and you've just got to take a break. How frequently do you suffer this kind of Warhammer burnout, and what do you do to distance yourself from the hobby in these times to give yourself a break?
I think that was actually more common the first 5 years I worked on the project, because, like I said, when I started a new book, I would sit and just work on that book straight, like do nothing else, just sit and work my ass off on a book, like 16 hours a day sometimes if I had the day off. And after that, I would often need a little bit of a recharge. Nowadays, I don't really work in that sort of period of time. It's more like, okay, I do maybe an hour or two per day or something like that if I have the time to spare. So I don't really feel burned out in the same sense, which I guess is good.
Yeah. So you just kind of roll it along, and it's your zen time, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. I like to put on some good metal in the background and sit and work on a book or
Nice.
watch some TV show a little bit in the background. Maybe not TV show too much because it's kind of hard to follow the story there while at the same time trying to focus on the story in the book. So it's more music in that case.
Especially if you have to read the Swedish subtitles, yeah.
Oh no, I don't do that. English subtitles every time. I can't stand the Swedish translation. It sounds so weird in my head. But other than that, like, what I do to myself, I like to play video games quite a bit as well. You know, like
200 hours plus, apparently.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I play more than Total War games. I play a lot of like Battlefield, Call of Duty as well. You know, it's fun to relax and shoot some noobs in the face. So do that as well, and spend some time with my girlfriend, of course. That's would be mandatory.
I noticed. I hope she doesn't listen to this because she came well down the list, mate. She was well down that list, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm hoping she doesn't hear
to
this.
edit that part out.
or at least put it first.
Yes, absolutely. If you're listening, honey, I love you.
So what is your favourite part of the hobby? The games, the models, or the lore?
Oh, I'll answer that for him. It's definitely the lore.
Yeah, I would say that it started with the models, then it became the game, but nowadays it's more the lore, I'd say, because I have so many models that are non-GW models, but because you know they fit with the Warhammer lore or with Warhammer setting, because it's very historically based, to speak, and if you paint them the right colors as well, it really does feel like Warhammer miniatures. So I'm not gonna say that it's especially the GW models, maybe the models by themselves, I guess, because like I said, I like the historical wargaming as well. But when it comes to Warhammer, I'd say, it's the lore for sure.
Yeah. And I guess the lore kind of drives the other two, the game and the models, really.
Yeah.
And I think that historical sort of thing, that was much more prevalent during the Perry's time, but they've definitely kind of stuck with some form of, root in history kind of gear with all their armies.
Yeah.
Now, we did talk about what your favourite army was, but what is your favourite army to play and least favourite to play against?
Well, least favorite to play against would be demons, as mentioned before. Yeah, I don't really like demons particularly much there, but favorite army to play? Cool. I might have to go with, I think Dogs of War are really fun because they have so much variety to them, but I also think Cathay is a lot of fun as well because it's kind of like Empire but with more fantasy creatures in them and a shit ton of war machines. I think Cathay is like, what is it, like 8 or 10 war machines in total with the smaller
like
ones?
that.
Yeah. So Cathay is a lot of fun. I really like war machines. I'm actually
Show the black powder.
Yeah, exactly. I actually don't have a dwarf army now that I think about it, which is weird.
What?
I have a lot of I have a lot of dwarves from my Dogs of War army though, so that's kind of like an army in itself. It's
That makes up for it.
Yeah, I have like 6 or 7 units of dwarves all in all, so they kind of make up an army if I were to play it like a standalone, I suppose.
Does Sweden have national service?
National service as in
As in military service?
Yeah, it's not mandatory now. Well, it wasn't mandatory when I had to do it, so I didn't have to do it, which meant I could focus on study and Warhammer books instead.
I was going to say, did you spend some time in the artillery with all that love for war machines?
You'd think so, but no, not really. It's more from I guess movies and video games as well. Like Total War, just doing war machine armies is pretty fun in custom battle.
and loving seeing shit go boom.
Yeah, exactly.
So we touched on this a little bit. Have you ever considered doing a lore compilation for the end times? Perhaps attempting to improve it somewhat / give the factions unique to Warhammer Armies Project an ending that isn't getting eaten by Skaven.
I'd say, yeah, I did give it a consideration, and then I pretty quickly shut down the idea because, like I said, I haven't even bothered reading the end times. I consider that to be non-canon in my book. Like,
Me too. No Malak.
Does Nagash come back at least?
Yeah, I mean, Nagash is mentioned in the lore as well. It's just kind of like he hasn't officially made a comeback yet. But I mean, we all know that he's there in Nagashisar somewhere dwelling.
Doing
So
his
I
thing,
guess,
playing with himself,
yeah,
playing games of Warhammer.
exactly. So I mean, the Nagash expansion I will have will definitely sort of bring him back rules-wise, as well with his own Mortark or what do you call it? The
The
Ossiarch.
Ossiarch, yeah.
Yeah, his Ossiarch army. So you can play him in case you want to do your own end times army. But I'm not really planning on advancing the storyline past what is it? 25, 50, 2022. Yeah, I think about it, Swedish 2,522. That's like the official year that I'm cutting the timeline. Other than that, I think
Gotcha.
it's fine if people want to make up their own end times or something like that. But I'm not gonna push that forward in my canon.
Yeah, fair enough.
Itself.
Yeah, and once again, like if you were made to, it wouldn't have the same kind of passion about it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
Seeing
That's
as
fair
I don't
enough.
like the end times at all, I'm not really gonna bother putting in the effort in trying to rewrite them either. So
Yeah,
So I know you said you dislike playing against demons, but what if have you ever thought about have you read the Forge World Tamurakan book?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I based the Chaos Dwarf book that I made around that one, so sure.
Okay, wasn't sure if you were if you would make a campaign based on that, or if that's all. I was just curious.
Okay. Well, I'm not really planning on making a completely new campaign as such. I think I like to work more around established material and sort of update that. I mean, if I were to work on Games Workshop and be tasked with, okay, you want to write a new campaign, I think, yeah, okay, I can probably do that. I mean, I would have to do a lot of reading around it and to try and get an idea of what it would be around. Because, like I said, I don't do most of the writing myself. I try to keep most of the writing I do fairly generic as well, so it's sort of doesn't jive with anybody's opinion about what this army would look like. That would be one of the main complaints I read online as well, that some people think that my books are too generic, but that's kind of the whole idea, because I feel like if I go and make it too specialized, saying that, okay, Nippon have super samurai that can cast medical spells and they can cut through rocks with their super katanas and whatever, because that's what they do in anime. I think a lot of people who prefer the more historical side is not going to enjoy that. Whereas pretty much everybody would probably agree that, okay, Nippon has samurai. Samurai are knights. Knights are weapon skill 4, strength 3 for the most part, and so on, with leadership 8. So that's kind of what I tried to base it around, a more generic.
We had a local guy start collecting Nippon, and he was telling us some of the rules because I hadn't read them explicitly myself. And man, you could make some really cool combos in that with your rule set. And they seem like they could be not obviously super strong, but they looked really fun to play.
Yeah, Nippon is a pretty fun army too. Not that easy to play though, because you have very low armor saves. So you will take a lot of damage against missile fire, for example.
Yes.
But they're pretty fast and mobile, so you got that going for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we actually saw that in that Tom Cruise movie where they were facing off against Gatling guns.
Oh yeah, The Last Samurai, great movie.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, they took a hell of a lot of fire in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, no, it is based in history. That's good.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah.
So what aspects of the hobby and/or community do you find frustrating?
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Here we go. Wow.
Don't mention Discord names.
Yeah,
we can edit that out.
Yeah, I think hobby-wise, when it comes to W, I guess the thing I dislike the most there would be inconsistency, because you have like, especially when it comes to the lore, like you have one source saying this, and then you have another source saying something completely different. I'm like, okay, which one is supposed to be the canon one here? Because they can't obviously be both. And then I sort of have to try and either write them together, or sort of make up something in between or something like that, or just choose one over the other, which I really hate. I just wish they were really be more consistent with the writing in the previous editions, because that part is probably the most frustrating for me when it comes to the work I do on the books itself. I guess if you come to the community in this case, it would be when we have two big disagreements, which has become very long-winded discussions that might not actually end up anywhere, because it's pretty energy draining. And I understand it needs to be done, because without discussion, well, we're not really going to be able to think of different. Yeah, exactly. We're not going to make any progress or think of possibly the best solution. If we say, okay, let's go with this. If somebody else has a better idea, then of course that would be better to go with that one. But yeah, sometimes it can be pretty draining. Overall, it's definitely worth it, but a little bit draining.
So one of the best parts about your thing is that you allow a community to speak their minds and help change rules. But for you, that's obvious. That's also one of the worst parts about it.
Kind of,
it's
yeah.
fair.
Like,
I totally get it.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody else said like, okay, how about this? And I'd be like, yeah, that's a great idea. I'll implement that one. Then it's just no problem. But then it can either be like, I want to have this, but another person like, no, I hate this. I don't want to have that. And be like, I don't know. It's like it's either this or that. And you have
Too
like
much
a
bias
huge
here and there.
yeah. Stuff like that is pretty tiring.
Yeah. Have you come across anyone, like any members of the community that feel like they should have a monopoly on your time or a monopoly on your creativity? Someone that's come up and said, hey, look, this particular thing here, you need to work on this, and I want that, and I want this. And you've thought to yourself, well, hang on, this isn't costing you anything. Like, I'm doing this for free. How dare you kind of expect me to do X, Y, and Z?
Kinda. I mean, I don't have to really adhere to anything somebody wants, but I mean,
but more
most
that
of the
pretentious
time,
kind of.
Yeah. I guess sometimes that doesn't happen too often. I think it's more fun when you read on 4chan about people having their complaints about the books, because like sometimes you have people actually saying, okay, this book sucks, and then they list the reasons why, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, those things do suck. I'm gonna go back and change that. But then of course you have other times when people are like, oh, it sucks. Why? It sucks. Okay, but why? It doesn't help at all. I can't improve the book if you don't tell me what sucks. So I don't really pay too much attention to that sort of stuff, of course, but it's kind of frustrating. I think
so as far as the constructive feedback goes, you're very open to it, and I guess, and by the sounds of it, you actually quite like it.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the most fun one, I think, also most hair-tearing one, was somebody discussing the Cathay book and how it's so unoriginal because it was sort of based too much on China. Like, okay, you're saying that Cathay is too similar to China. Like, what would make it more original? Like, well, how about adding space cows from that book that Jules Verne wrote?
Oh my gosh.
Like, so you want space cows from Venus in the Cathay book? Like, yeah. Like,
do you have a regeneration save? Do you live under a bridge?
Yeah. It's like it's stuff like that when you get an idea or suggestion that is just so dumb you don't even know what to respond to it. It's not too common, fortunately, though. But those the time you just like nope, no more internet today.
Yeah. That kind of rolls into our next question.
Yep.
How much does the difference of opinion presented affect your thoughts on what is fundamentally your own project?
Well, that would also really depend on how much of an opinion it is. Like I said, if it's just one guy saying that, I think this should change, and I don't really agree with that because that person hasn't really given me a good reason for it, then obviously it's really likely to change. But of course, if I have a lot of people saying that, okay, this combination is broken, it needs to be looked over, and at first I'm like, yeah, well, it doesn't look that broken. But then you have more people thinking, no, but I played this doesn't work. Okay, okay. We have a lot more feedback on this particular issue. I will go and change it. So
yeah.
I would say that I definitely take the community's feedback very much in mind. But it can also be a thing that even if, like, I actually talked about that on the Discord, say that 200 people want Mickey Mouse to be a special character in this game. It doesn't matter that really, because I'm not going to put Mickey Mouse in the Skaven book, not least that would be by Disney. But
if just one Australian wants a Mad Meme Master of Middenheim in the Empire book, he'll get it.
I'll get back to you on that one.
Dogs of War it is.
Yeah.
That's fair though. That's fair enough. That's cool. I think that pretty much gets us to the end of the extra questions.
Yeah.
I think now Blue can get on to the actual questions we had.
Okay.
Well, there's only a couple, and it seems like one of them actually you've asked. It was the are you going to continue to add rules to represent the newer Age of Sigmar models?
Oh yeah. Which is again model by model basis essentially.
Yeah.
Let's
I
see.
want the first question. That's the one that interests me because I want to play that.
Oh.
The first one? Okay, so
Yeah.
the first communication we have is, are there any plans to make a campaign system to support your rule set? And I believe there is, actually. It's on your list of things to do.
Yeah, I have several campaigns, I guess. But again, those are mainly just campaigns that are based around the already existing campaigns by GW in 6th edition and 7th edition. So
Nice.
I'm not really planning on making a complete campaign system from scratch as such. Or like you also had the Mighty Empires campaign system, which
Mhm.
I never really played with that one. And I don't know, I might re-release the rules actually for it, just update for 9th edition where it might be necessary. But I'm probably not going to sit down and write the whole campaign system as such. That's a little bit too much work to do on my spare time, I think.
So you would like, let's say you would take the I'm trying to think, that Bretonian one that was from the White Dwarf.
White Dwarf 300, I think. The in the Valley Grismere.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Would you update any of those rules, or maybe rules for the terrain or some of the features to fit your setting, or do you think they're just good to go as is and don't update anything?
I think I might do a bit of a re-release on that one because I have like a whole book based on just scenarios from the various White Dwarfs and stuff like that I'm working on compiling, and those would obviously be updated for the 9th edition rule set where necessary.
Okay.
For the most part, it should be pretty much good to go. I don't think I need to do that many changes, so it's just going to be a huge amount of work with compiling everything together, with making a nice layout and everything like that. But yeah, my idea is to try and compile pretty much every scenario that GW have ever released really into one big book. So people
Every
can play
single
with that.
one?
Every single one, yeah.
Jesus.
Holy
Yeah.
cow. That's
Yeah,
that's
Tears of
hundreds
Aisha, here we
scenarios.
come.
Yeah. I think I had some help with a guy on the Discord as well with that. I think I don't know how many what are we up to? I think it was over 200 or something like that at least.
Oh, for sure. Easily.
So yeah, it was a lot.
Okay. I mean, I'm looking forward to that whenever that actually happens.
Yeah, I think a year at least, maybe 2.
So the next question is, are there
Yep.
any plans to make a Warhammer historical list?
That one could be interpreted in 2 ways. Does it mean Warhammer historical as in like Warhammer Ancient Battles, sort of with like English armies or French armies or Spanish armies or something like that, or more like the real Age of Sigmar with Sigmar's a special character and like the Teutonians and Unberogens and stuff like that?
I'd say answer both. I'd say answer both, just to
All
cover
right.
both bases.
I have considered both of them actually, because historical lists, like I said, a huge history buff. Wouldn't mind having essentially being able to play like the Henry V's army, but with Warhammer rules. I mean, you kind of can do it with Warhammer Ancient Battle rules. So I'm not sure if it's really that much of a point to really re-release that one. That would kind of also be part of the Border Princess list because there isn't really any lore on them because they're really just a combination of like Empire, Telean, and Bretonian armies all together. So the Border Prince list that I'm working on or planning on to work on, it's probably just going to be sort of a pseudo historical army list as such. So you can essentially play any medieval army you want in the Border Prince army list. Other than that, though, when it comes to historical Warhammer, is also one thing I have considered, sort of to make like ancient alive Nehekadans, which again I might do that down the line. It's not going to be too big on lore and stuff like that. It's probably going to be pretty basic list. But in the case that somebody wanna sort of buy a bunch of historical Egyptian miniatures and play the Nehekadan army, I guess I could probably make that option available.
Okay. I
That'd be
definitely
pretty
like
cool.
the second one. Like, I would love to see okay, so my expectations for Warhammer the Old World, I guess they're a little higher than average, just because I'm cautiously optimistic, obviously, but I want something awesome to happen. Like, I would love them for them to go way back in time. I want to see a human Sigmar. Sigmar is alive at this point. Like, I would love to see something like that. So if that actually was released, I don't know. Historically, if you do release anything like that, I just thought that would be neat.
Yeah, like I said, that's one thing I definitely have considered doing. I would guess the Sigmar's rules would probably be kind of similar to Walton, seeing as he's like the reincarnation of Sigmar. So I'd probably take a lot of inspiration from that one.
Yeah. On the Nekahara one, I think most people have wanted to see a fleshy Nekaharan army at one point. I reckon that'd be so cool.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think it's going to be pretty basic though, because it's mainly just going to be like core units, but as humans. So I think rules-wise it wouldn't be anything too special. But yeah, I think just having the option itself would be probably fun for some people.
I think you could at least give them a better friggin' ballistic skill, couldn't you? Because they've actually got eyes now.
That's true.
Yeah, that would they would be a bit higher than BS2, that's for sure.
But then they wouldn't always sit on 5s, so that I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because when you're moving, and I'm at long range, and I'm skirmishing, and I'm behind soft cover or something, and then I still hit you on 5s. What? Come on.
Or if they've got Queen Nefrata, it's like I'm hitting you on 4s.
Yeah, that one has some issues in the 9th edition book as well, because of the way that multiple shots have well, actually I fixed that bug, but it was an issue where you could essentially fire 4 shots per turn with Queen Aferata, and that got a little bit much. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's grass.
Yeah.
Machine gun undead.
Pretty much like 100 shots per unit per turn or something like that. Like
Far out. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, as long as you're not on the receiving end, yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Rene,
And they'll make them fleshy so they can actually hit.
Yeah.
Rene, do you have any other community questions?
I don't think so. I think we got through pretty much everything. I've asked my own personal questions because, I always hijack these interviews.
Sure.
I think I'm all good. Yeah, I'm just checking my list. I'm checking it twice because it's that time of year.
Trying to see one of your nice.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good. We're cool. Thanks very much, Mathias, for that.
Yeah, no problem. It was pretty fun.
That was amazing. It was very fun. We've had a
Yeah,
good
very
laugh.
insightful. Well, that's
thanks. Yeah, thanks for coming along.
Yeah, that's all we have for you. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and listeners, I hope you enjoyed hearing the word straight from the creator's mouth about his incredible project that he has taken hours and hours and so much time of his own personal life to actually write something for the community.
Absolutely. I think it's worth mentioning also, Blue, that we have a keen interest in the Armies Project, and we're going to be doing a lot of coverage on it, reviewing a lot of the books, talking about different things. I think you guys are going to be planning a few battle reports with his books, aren't you?
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is use so I'm most interested in the books that obviously were just created from scratch, like Nippon or something like that, but I really am interested in the ones that never had a 7th or even 8th edition book, like Bretonnia or Skaven. So I am planning to so we just put up and uploaded to our YouTube channel a Bretonnian versus Tomb Kings battle, and you could see, obviously the viewers can see how the Bretonnians played, but what I'd like to do is do a, maybe not versus Tomb Kings again, but something. I want to play Bretonnians once more, but with your 9th edition Battles Project book for Bretonnia, because they get it. I mean, it's such a nice update, seeing everything brought up to speed to at least match the power of everything else. I'm really looking forward to putting them on the table.
Yeah, that would be really nice to see as well, I think.
Yeah, and even Skaven, because playing Skaven in 8th edition rules with their 6th edition book is, some of their rules are so overpowered. It's just didn't transfer very well. So using your rule set will be a huge game changer, and I just look forward to that. So that's what we plan to do. We plan to play several games with your rules and do a comparison, compared how powerful this is compared to this, their old rule set to this one, which should be great.
Yeah, I really look forward to seeing that one, especially since the Hell Pit Abomination got nerfed pretty hard.
Yes.
and needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's all we have.
I think
everyone, if you want to hop on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, you can just find us. Just search SquareHammer or SquareHammer Community. Mathias, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, no problem. It was, like I said, really fun.
And I think, Mathias, you're on our Facebook group, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm
so look,
lurking around there in the shadows somewhere. Like a Steven
if anyone
assassin.
wants to
Find him and
anyone
bug him.
wants to make contact and have a chat to Mathias about his work or any upcoming stuff, feel free to jump on our Facebook group and just type his name into the box there, and he should pop up. It's kind of like summoning the devil, but it's Mathias.
The
Yeah, more or
social
less.
media hounds. All right, we all take care.
Lovely darts. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Yeah, cheers. Bye.